Welcome back to the Writer's Workshop and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Goodbye 2025. Hello 2026.
Yes.
New chapter is beginning.
This is the first video that we are taping of the new year. So
Yes. Out with the old, in with the new.
In with the new, yes.
So in today's video, we will be going over the pros and cons of a pen name and whether you should or should not use it.
Very important to go over. And this has been a question that many people have asked us as we are at shows and they come up with questions. And so we thought we would delve into it today to see why you would or possibly would not want to use a pen name when you're writing.
So let's get started.
The first and primary reason most of us go under a pen name is for privacy reasons. I highly recommend you use a pen name if you are single, if you are a single mother, or even if you're married but have young kids. Because let's face it, if you happen to write erotica, you don't exactly want the local PTA breathing down your neck as to whether you're fit to be a parent or not because you write erotica. So just save yourself a lot of trouble and go under a pen name.
Though we have come a long way in generations, there are still many people who frown over young children's parents being authors in many different genres. It's not just erotic.
No, it's not. So that is the biggest thing. The other thing is it gives you privacy when you go out in public, just in general.
It's also a level of security, I would say.
Yeah, it is. Very much so.
Another good reason to use a pen name is genre separation. This can be if you decide to write in two completely opposite ends of the spectrum genres. Let's say you decide you start off as writing horror fiction like Stephen King, but then you want to do Magic Treehouse style children's books. You would probably really benefit from separating the author titles there.
Yes, definitely. Another reason is if you are in a profession such as a school teacher or healthcare or something like that. Sometimes they can be a little iffy on some writing. So depending on what you write, quite often it might behoove you to go ahead and go under a pen name and keep that quiet.
It's not even just for your profession, but I've had several authors who have complained that their spouse, who has been in medical profession or law enforcement or whatever have you, have dealt with issues because their spouse is a writer and writing something that is generally not approved by public or could be controversy. Branding and markability is another good reason to choose a pen name. This can be another way of getting your name out there for your name to fit your genre or your style of books. There's one, Opal Rain, does just that name right there is a very good name for the genre that she writes, which is your monster romance and high fantasy. Names tend to suit your roles. A good example outside of writing in Hollywood is actually Penelope Cruz. And not a lot of people know that her real name is Agnes, but her agent actually was the one that talked her into switching her pen name to Penelope Cruz in order for it to be a better opportunity for her to get roles. It just suited her roles better.
Another reason is just creative freedom. When you're writing under another name other than your own, a lot of times it can feel
invigorating,
liberating, and allow those juices to flow and allow the creativity to flow and open up and just give you a sense of satisfaction that you would otherwise not have. Now, I will say that you have wide variety of choices on pen names should you decide to go down that road. You could go with a completely different name, or I see a lot of people that I know personally have taken some form of their real name. I know one author has taken their middle name and used that as their first name of their pen name, and then I think they use their maiden name as the last name. So that's an idea.
Another example is V.E. Schwab. Her name is Victoria V.E. Schwab.
So you have multiple options to choose from, and the sky's open. One thing I would caution you on is once you pick a name, go through and make sure that there are not numerous other people using that pen name.
Or anything similar.
Yeah, or anything similar, because that can be a real problem. If somebody were to decide to use Steve King, I can almost promise you that Stephen King would have something to say about it.
Another reason why I would think that you would use it for creative freedom is very similar to what you used to describe to me as a child when I was growing up, is a mother has many hats. And sometimes you have to imagine putting on a different hat in order to take on that role or that persona. And so for a lot of people, if you have like a lot of children or a busy household, and it's very hard for you to slip from your real life into the persona of writing, maybe giving yourself that pen name would allow you to slip into that role a little bit easier. Instead of being Susie Brown today, I am now Felicia Keaton.
I knew a musician who once told me that when they put their cowboy boots on, they slipped into their persona of being a musician because they were accountant by day.
Another good example of that entire scenario.
But as soon as they put those cowboy boots on, they immediately went into their musician persona.
Another good reason is for reinvention or a fresh start. If you've been writing for a long time under your real name or a pen name and things just aren't really working out for you and you feel like you need to change the waters, change the tide, then sometimes reinventing yourself under a different name can help. There have been many authors who they have a name, and I do not know if it's their real name or their pen name, but then they bring in another name and it's still them, and they show writing those two names on one book to kind of get the few that are really following them to transition over to that secondary name.
Yeah, you'll see.
Celia Cow did it.
Yes, Celia Cow writing as, and she's got another name and I don't know what it is.
It started with a T, but yeah, I've seen it many
times.
times.
She went from one genre over to more of a sci-fi genre.
She went from paranormal romance to sci-fi genre, and her paranormal was strictly just shifters, vampires. There was no real magical things or science fiction into it, whereas the sci-fi definitely leaned heavier into sci-fi elements away from the whole paranormal.
So that's another reason why you could possibly have a pen name or even two.
Or two pen names, yes. Another good example is culture or linguistics. We kind of touched on this with Penelope Cruz, how Agnes really did not fit her roles, but the name Penelope Cruz did. So if you're in more of a cultural writing phase or genre, you're going to want to pick a name that fits more for your culture that you're writing about.
Just remember, sometimes in the end, it's a personal choice. If you feel better going under a pen name, then by all means do it. There is a lot of writers that do it, and for multiple reasons. If you
family members may frown upon them being a writer rather than going into a lawyer profession.
Exactly. So that is, it's a personal choice. Just always remember that. I will give one little tiny bit of advice though, is it's something you pretty much need to establish at the very beginning.
Yes.
Because one of the things that you do not want to do is start off with one and then try to switch over to another. Either go to a pen name and go back to your real name, or real name and go to a pen name. It is difficult to do that. You will end up losing some fans, and that's just an area that you really don't want to touch if you can get away with it. You're better off making that decision at the beginning and then sticking with it. Another thing that I will go over with you as far as going over personal safety that we touched at the beginning of this video, is look into setting up a P.O. box. This is something that I wish we had done at the beginning. We did not. And so to this day, we have a core set of fans that have our actual home address. Now, thankfully, most of those have transitioned from fan over to friend. And so I don't really, worry about things too much, but it's something I wish we had done a long time ago. We do have a P.O. box set up at this point, and so most people know that as our address, and it's another level of safety because let's face it, you don't want to end up being in a situation like Misery.
Not really, no. So just a few more things to touch on real quick with pen names on reasons you may not want to choose a pen name. One of which is if you're writing nonfiction or memoirs. This is a good area where you're not going to want to go under a pen name. You're going to want to stick with your actual name because you're referencing yourself in your writing.
Very true. Another reason would be if you're completely comfortable showing your real identity out in public at all times. Again, if you are a female, if you have small children, think very strongly about this. There is no guarantee that you're going to, write a book, become a millionaire, the whole 9 yards. Most of the time that does not happen. But we never know what is going to happen 5, 10, 15 years from now. And if you continue writing, you may very well hit a level of success that you may have wished if you did not start with a pen name that you had of. Or in our case, you started with a P.O. box and didn't have to go back and try to change that.
To give you a little bit of an example on how versatile pen names can be, Alice Brown is a pen name. Now, there is a funny story to Alice Brown. We actually took Alice's real name, which I'm not going to give away for safety purposes, but we fed it into a generator that took your real name and turned it into a vampire name. And this was back when she was getting ready to start writing Vampires Among Us.
Yes.
And so it all kind of blended in together, and it fit her so well. For me, my idol at the time when I started writing was Lady Gaga, and I absolutely loved her and how she spoke out for creativity and against people shunning you because you were slightly different. And so my pen name ended up being a takeoff of her and my real name, Victoria, Lady V, which I still get asked to this day if it's Lady 5, but no, it's Lady V.
One of the reasons why you may not want to go under a pen name is social media. Let's face it, there are so many platforms out there. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Threads,
Pinterest.
There's numerous out there.
Dime a dozen.
It is very hard to try to post consistently on so many different platforms. If you go by a pen name, you have to worry about your pen name and all that posting. Plus you want to get over on your personal one too once in a while and post on there, and that can be a lot and it can be very overwhelming, and we certainly understand that. That's a problem that we have quite often, trying to keep up with everything.
Well, you can also run into the problem, and so far all I know that this exists on is Facebook, but if you go under a name like I do with Lady V, you cannot actually set up a Facebook account as Lady V. They have to identify you as a actual physical person, not a fake name.
Yeah, they've cracked down on that. A way around that would be set up a business page,
and you could set that up as your pen name, but you have to have your personal one in order to activate it. One final reason as to why you may not want to go with a pen name is if you've already established reader trust. If you've built your social media, even as you were writing before you got published, you built it with your regular name or another pen name. You don't want to turn around and switch as you're starting to publish or by your second, third book. You're going to want to be consistent with that name and hold your reader's trust and loyalty.
So to end this, remember that a pen name is a tool. It is not a requirement.
It's just like your pens and your keyboard.
It is a personal choice. Some people do go under it, others don't. Everybody has their reasons why. There's no right or wrong way.
That's it for today. We thank you for joining us, and as always, remember, never stop learning and never stop dreaming.